wanted to touch on what I think is a important topic in lucid dreaming that tends to get neglected. And this has to do with how the nature of consciousness is dialectical. And it's formed of all these varying contradictions and opposing forces. And sometimes, it can be hard to feel like you can navigate that. So I do want to talk about this topic of dialectics, because this is where the path of mindfulness leads us. And I will say, before jumping into this, I think this is underrepresented in many modern lucid dreaming teachings. Or maybe it's there, but it's a little more implicit. And I think it's worth making it more explicit. And I was forced to kind of recognize this more recently and start to advocate more for this topic when I went to my last live retreat, 2019, and it was a retreat with Dr. LaBerge and Andrew Holecek, who's a Buddhist teacher, a teacher of dream yoga. So we had these polarities, this sort of like east and west polarity in the audience. So a lot of longtime practicing Buddhists and seasoned meditation practitioners, and then there were these more Western-like folk that were really interested in lucid dreaming and the science of consciousness, trying to control your dreams. So there was certainly like a tension around this, and I realized, how important that it is to discuss this. So dialectics, it's a philosophical worldview. Don't worry if you fell asleep in your college philosophy classes. I'm going to give you some, just a few points to help you to start understanding this topic. And this really is about developing a worldview that integrates two seemingly opposing forces into a unified whole. And so some concepts that can help you connect with this more might be the interrelatedness or interconnectivity of all things, or wholeness or unity. And very often our thinking tends to be kind of either or black or white, all or nothing. This is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. But a dialectical understanding of reality helps you hold two competing forces, two things that are opposites at the same time, and recognize that they can both be true at the same time, or they can be both worthy of your attention or important. So it's not this or that, it's both. And this synthesis of these polarities, these contradictions, these and holding these in our consciousness, both of them together, this is what helps us get closer to a better approximation of what is the truth or what is reality. And I really like this work because it does a really great job of acknowledging that the process of growing, changing as a person, that comes from a place of conflict and opposition, and working through that and synthesizing seemingly opposing forces. Another piece about this that is really wonderful is I believe that these sort of dialectical worldviews and nurturing these understandings in ourselves, I think it can be more of a bridge to what are often called in the lucid dreaming literatures non-dual states of consciousness, where there is no separation between you or me, or there's no sense of subject or object. It's all unified. So let's make this practical here. What could be some of the dialectical tensions that are common in a lucid dreaming practice? And of course, you're going to encounter these. And one that really stands out is the tensions between what we define as being awake and what we define as being asleep. REM sleep, for example, we call that sleep, but there's a lot of continuity with our waking experiences in that state. And moreover, when we're awake in the physical world, we can also be asleep, so to speak. We might be on autopilot or kind of dissociated or not really thinking about what we're doing. Another really great tension to consider is this balance between accepting things as they are, seeing things as they are, not trying to change things, that mindfulness component where we just observe and let be, versus change, that drive to control things or control the dream. And this is quite the myth it's a very powerful one about lucid dreaming, is that we're just trying to control things. But really, when you get into this practice, that's so far from the truth. So, this is a place where I really see, and I wish I talked about more in that last workshop with Holecek and Dr. LaBerge, that there needs to be a balancing between two. Another tension you might notice come up is this desire or drive to want something and then also not want something at the same time, which sounds totally contradictory, but this happens all the time in a practice. My own, I heard talking about this, like, I want to lucid dream, I want to do these practices, but at the same time, I don't want to, or I feel like I can't, or it's not a priority for me. So we're kind of juggling these two different spaces at the same time on occasion. Another important tension you'll encounter is between meaning and meaninglessness. And if you've been seasoned in any type of dream work for a while, you'll notice that you probably can gather a lot of deep meaning from your dreams. But at the same time, there might be some meaningless to it. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Do you really have to overinterpret or analyze everything? That can detract from the experience. So you want to find the balance on this continuum for you. It's not either or, it's both, and it can be in flux and in a constant state of change in your practice. Another one I think is important is that tension between being goal-oriented, wanting to achieve things in lucid dreams, carry out specific goals or tasks, and the more mindful approach, which is one of non-striving, simply observing, letting things be, not interrupting the flow of the dream, rather just staying lucid. The tension between real and not real is a really interesting one. You'll notice, again, that's my science bias. Of course, and like I think most people do, I tend to be biased toward, the physical world, the material world being real, and then the dream being not real. But there's a synthesis between the two as well. The things that we dream about certainly can matter in our realities. If oh my gosh, what's his name? Robert Moss was in here right now, he'd be tearing me up about me calling dreams not real. He really fully believes that those experiences are real realities with their own merit, and not everybody thinks that way, right? So where do we find the balance in that tension? Another one I think is important to be considering is that balance between observing reality and then participating it. So usually when we're observing reality, we kind of detach from our experiences. We take more of a third person perspective. And this relates to lucidity. In order to know that you're dreaming, you have to have that observer perspective. But if you're only observing and you're concentrating so hard on just remembering that this is a dream, what I'm observing, then that can detract from your capacity to interact and participate in the dream. And so, but if you participate too much in the dream, you could get swept up in non-lucidity. So how do you find that balance between both? Another one that I think is very relevant to some of the self-integrative work we've been doing relates to that distinction between self and other. What is me and what is not me? What do I reject or not see as a part of me, and what do I take ownership of? And so we're always balancing on that continuum. It can be a bit of a seesaw sometimes, but lucidity work is supposed to help you integrate the not me or the other with me, so there is no separation. And maybe more practical ones, like in your life, for example, maybe you're a giving person or you always put other people before you. Well, that's great, but maybe sometimes that needs to be balanced with what some people call selfishness, but I call self-preservation, putting yourself first or saying no to things. And there can be lots of different archetypal tensions. So that could be between like the masculine and the feminine, the parts of you that you see that are healthy and then the other parts that are wounded. The list goes on. So I want to give y'all one more dialectical model, because we're going to incorporate a little bit of this into our meditation today. This is a wise mind model of our states of consciousness. And I think it's kind of an overarching model for a lot of these different dialectics. And this has to do, I think the Venn diagram represents it pretty well. So this has to do with how our mind tends to have a couple different spaces. One that is very rational, reasonable, and then another side that is very emotional. So the rational or reasonable side of our minds are very logistical. It doesn't think with our feelings. This is what you use to make a phone call or get directions somewhere, or build a company. You kind of leave emotions out of your decision making. And this can all be very helpful in certain circumstances. There's drawbacks to really only being at the extreme of reasonable mind or being biased toward the reasonable mind side, because then you might be kind of too detached from your emotions, for example. You might have trouble empathizing with other people, or there might be certain struggles in your ability to form or maintain your relationships. Then on the emotion side of this model, this is the part of our minds that tends to think with our feelings, and our feelings are not rational. Um, this side of our mind, it motivates wonderful things, creativity, generosity, love, passion. There's drawbacks to this extreme as well, in that if you're only an emotional mind, you might be too disconnected from reason or rationality. You might not make the best decisions, for example. Um, this is like, if you ever see someone at the extreme of this is like when someone's so emotional or upset that they can't think straight. The things they say may not even make sense. And so there's drawbacks to only being on each of these states. But what we're looking for is the sweet spot. So somewhere in the middle here, which is what we call wise mind or wisdom. And we tend to liken this to what is most people call like your gut or your intuition. So this is the part of you deep down that just knows the truth, or knows the way or the path. And everybody has wise mind, but we're not always connected to it. So we want to try to cultivate this balance reason and emotion. Some people describe this as balancing left and right brain. I like the middle path. And this is also a way to connect deeper with yourself, your most authentic self. So we're going to do a meditation together. I'm excited about. I think we'll do this for about 10, 15 minutes because I kind of want us to reset our space.